Our 3 years of research has stemmed from the idea that, well, if you just unpack the economics and unpack your own kind of biology, psychology, neurology, the interaction between the two means addiction at a societal scale is pretty predictable and inevitable. The way that we're seeing them as a whole is through the lens of self-care gone wrong. So people consume these products, to say alcohol, not out of selfish, hedonistic pleasure seeking. We're seeing it as extensions to emotional regulation. And then the solution is, let's build the connection economy. So where the spaces that offer us connection and community are as available as addictive products, so we don't need to turn to them for self-care. Have I made friends in a club that I'm still friends with? And I'm just like, I just don't think so. You know, maybe in the pub a couple of times, but like real connection, real proper friends, I think that is exceedingly rare. And then if you think about the amount of time that the time and the money that I've spent, all the weekends that I've spent, that's a terrible return on investment. Approach shouldn't be, here's £1 million, go do some more football stuff. It should be, let's create the system where we speak to young people and help them identify the little niche pockets of community and culture and interests and passions that they have, and build services and activities around that in the local area, in local spaces.
Hello and welcome everyone to one of Alcohol Review's occasional short video interviews. You'll find out more on the webpage and YouTube show notes. Please like and subscribe on there and click the link to see the benefits of the full service. So let's get started. We'll be broadening our horizons this time. We can find ourselves over-consuming a whole range of products, not just alcohol, like social media, vapes, gambling, gaming, and maybe even chatbots. And there is very good reason to think these products are deliberately designed to make us come back for more. And why wouldn't they be? And there's also good reason to think that young people are among the most prized targets. So I'm delighted to welcome Joe Wolf, who is at the forefront of tackling these challenges as a youthful co-lead of the Addiction Economy Initiative at Society Inside, a UK NGO looking at public health and technology. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. So to start with the very obvious question, tell us what is an addiction economy?
Well, so when I was doing my master's dissertation, I was doing science communication at UCL. They were giving me some academic titles, and I was like, I don't really want to do that. And at the time, I was vaping watermelon ice elf bars, and I was playing with it in my pocket. I was thinking, hang on a minute, why am I doing? Why are all of my friends vaping when none of us had previously smoked? And it was something just kind of clicked at me. And I spoke to my lecturers, and they were like, well, it's not new. And I was like, well, what do you mean it's not new? Like, have you not seen what's going on up in Newcastle? Of course, they hadn't, because they don't live in our world or see what we see, which is part of the work leads on to. And I did a 10-minute documentary on the economics behind youth vaping, and I was talking to my mum about this, who has a history in responsible innovation, 30-year history. And we realized that these disposable vapes were a great example of what she was calling irresponsible innovation. And then going a bit back and forth, we realized, well, if you analyze the economics behind these addictions, behind alcohol, vaping, tobacco, as you said, it kind of explains it a lot better than whatever else I thought was going on, was in the addiction literature, really. And the thing that really drew it to my attention, I think, made it really obvious to me, was the speed of it. So back in 2022 in Newcastle, I kind of left for Christmas break, and vaping wasn't really that big a thing. And I came back, and the vapes were in every shop, in post offices, train stations, in club toilets and takeaways. And then everyone started doing it. And I was like, oh, well, that's why I did it, because it was made so available in my student area, not because I've got a diseased brain or I'm a weak person. So our 3 years of research has stemmed from the idea that, well, if you just unpack the economics and unpack your own kind of biology, psychology, neurology, the interaction between the two means addiction at a societal scale is pretty predictable and inevitable. And then the solution is, let's build the connection economy. So where the spaces that offer us connection and community are as available as addictive products, so we don't need to turn to them for self-care.
Okay, and what does the addictive economy do to the individual in terms of their ability to, control or have freedom over their behaviour with regard to a particular product?
Yeah, I mean, it's addiction was a weird term for us because it was so laden with meaning, so contested in academic circles, that we tend to go with the NHS definition of addiction, which is being unable to control your use of a product past the point at which it harms you. Because then it just opens you up to recognize this big gradation of harms and addictions, gradation of addiction that to, you know, the doctor and saying, I think I'm addicted to alcohol. And they say, well, you haven't actually quite hit the DSM-12 criteria, go away. You come back next week and suddenly you are. You're like, well, what's going on there? There's obviously a spectrum and a scale of addiction. And it doesn't have to be a monetizable, a value, you know, kind of, doesn't have to be able to place a monetary value on the harm for it to be real and it to be worth fighting against, I guess, at scale.
Yeah.
And that's what led us to the invisible harms concept. But go on.
Please expand on what you mean by invisible harms.
Yeah, it was really looking at young people, looking at myself and all my friends, and none of them I would class as, you know, alcoholics or gambling addicts or gaming addicts. But then it was just the consistent waking up being like, why did I do that? That's so stupid. All the money we spent, the arguments you have, let alone, you know, of course, the invisible harms of, you know, any addiction. The father who can't play football with his son because he's obese, the relationships that break down because of gambling harms and money issues. All of these aren't tracked at all, really, on any kind of big system, because they don't show up as a valuable thing to put value on, but they impede and impair our well-being all the time.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't personally scroll social media so much. I may have a slight LinkedIn problem, maybe a bit of an email checking problem, but I don't really do the social so much these days, although I did when Facebook first started. But I remember a couple of days ago, I talked to a younger person, let's say, who told me they were tired from doom scrolling. And well, how can you be tired from doom scrolling? But you know, on further investigation, she'd been doom scrolling for 5 hours until, you know, 4 or 5 in the morning, and therefore only had 3 hours sleep. So, I mean, that's a harm I'm simply not, you know, accustomed to having myself. It may interrupt my sleep a bit, but yeah. So, I guess that would be a kind of invisible harm from a new technology.
Absolutely. I mean, and 5 hours is actually a relatively small amount. I've been told of a young person I know, was like, when his friends came back from summer, they were comparing their screen times, and one of them said, I did 18 hours in a single day on TikTok.
Okay, I'm learning something today. Thank you very much for opening my eyes to that.
I'll just transition to something scarier. That obviously, I'm sure you've heard of the NEETs report that came out, and they talked a lot about these lost years. So the young people that didn't, you know, went in and out of training, unemployment, you know, for 3, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, that they spent in their bedroom. And it's like, what can you do in a bedroom for 3 years? Arguably, mostly gambling, gaming, scrolling, eating, vaping, watching pornography, I'd say. And all of these has an effect on the young person's development, on their confidence, on their the development of their prefrontal cortex and their stress centers, and their ability to feel like the world is a conquerable place. And again, not going to show up on any kind of big, you know, monetary check, but the impact will be big, and it is big for these young people. And yeah.
And do you think this? I mean, there is a sort of you know, a wide range of different products there, but some of them, you know, do things to your brain through pharmaceutical type effects, with tobacco and nicotine and alcohol and maybe food to some degree will have a chemical effect on your brain through your their absorption. But others are you know, coming through our eyes and through our cognition and the way we perceive the world. Apps, dating apps, I know you have on your list as well. Is there a need to, you know, distinguish between these, or are they really part of the same story?
I mean, they're obviously distinguished in the literature, but I see them as more or less part of the same story. And the reason I say that is because, you know, when in and out of training, unemployment, you know, for 3, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, that they spent in their bedroom. And it's like, what can you do in a bedroom for 3 years? Arguably, mostly gambling, gaming, scrolling, eating, vaping, watching pornography, I'd say. And all of these has an effect on the young person's development, on their the development of their prefrontal cortex and their stress centers, and their ability to feel like the world is a conquerable place. And again, not going to show up on any kind of big, you know, monetary check, but because so the way that we're seeing them as a whole is through the lens of self-care gone wrong. So people consume these products, to say alcohol, not out of selfish, hedonistic pleasure seeking. We're seeing it as extensions to emotional regulation. So in the most fundamental sense, in a very similar way to thirst, hunger, and sleep, when your body recognizes that you're thirsty, that it predicts that, like, in the next kind of bit of time, I'm going to need more water in my cells, so I'm going to give you the pang of thirst. You're going to go and drink some water, and then you're going to be quenched, even though the water takes 30 minutes to actually get to the parts of the body that it needs to be. So when you have your body senses, okay, well, I'm stressed, I'm bored, I'm anxious, I'm sad, I'm angry, then your body obviously seeks to return to that balance, the norm, the set by baseline that you hope to be at. And instead of arguably doing the kind of longer, harder thing of just sitting with that feeling, or going out and overcoming or dealing with the task, the addiction economy and the drivers and the availability means that the opportunity to just mask it, to just, okay, I'll just scroll because it'll make me feel good. And it does make you feel good. Alcohol especially, if you're stressed after work, nervous before a party, you'll think, well, I'll just have a drink. And it does genuinely solve it. It does genuinely turn down the stress, the activation of the stress centers in the brain. It makes you feel better, but it doesn't address the root cause. And my example would be drinking when I was younger for parties. It's like, it would be, or if in the club or like that, it's like, I find talking to girls nerve-wracking, and I don't know how to dance. And to solve that problem, I could learn how to dance and practice talking to girls sober, or I could just get really drunk and I could just do it anyway. And just doing that again and again and again means that every time I've encountered that situation where I think, oh, bit nervous, bit this, masked with drinking, and I haven't actually conquered the problem that is causing the discomfort.
So in a sort of a sense, we're using them as a utility. They have utility value to solve a emotional or social issue that we have for a bit, to varying degrees of success, I would say, probably with it. Certainly with alcohol, it doesn't always work out for the best. But,
well, we think success in the short run often, because you do feel better, but then in the long run, it often then doesn't really solve the problems. And we pick and choose these products for different moments. So you would go to school and have a scroll on the bus because you're bored. You wouldn't have a pint on the bus because you might watch some porn when you're stressed revising, or you drink when you're out, you have a cigarette when you're out, or you eat when you're home from work and you just want to de-stress. All of them have different contexts within which they seem like the best solution. And the way that the addiction economy works is that it influences you unconsciously so that they seem like the best fit for that context. So the way that 15, or anyone is 15, and you're approaching this party and you're thinking, am I going to have my first drink? It's not like you're approaching that from a fresh canvas. What you're approaching, the prediction is this drink going to help with my problem of anxiety and nerves? You've seen 100,000 ads since before, you could, since in that moment, that say drinking solves this exact problem. Look at all these fun young people drinking and having fun and laughing. Look at all the adults that you've seen drinking in the street. So you're already completely biased by the economics to then think, okay, this is going to do it. And then you choose to do that. So while it's already been influenced.
Look at, the list of things there. We've got, alternative food, something to do with reducing our level of sort of fight or flight anxiety, gambling, get rich, improve our kind of financial well-being, social media, there's a sort of social status, social success, porn, I guess, sort of Darwinistic motives, let's say, dating apps. I guess we could say the same thing to a different level. They draw on, these are not trivial parts of our lives. These are quite fundamental parts of being a living being, let alone a human being, aren't they?
I'd say certainly fundamental parts of being a human being, fundamental parts of development as well. And they are obviously explicitly tied to these feelings on purpose. And when you look at each industry, there is clear self-care gone wrong aspects you could draw from it. So in the what was it, YGAM? I think it was YGAM's study on student gambling. The largest reason for gambling was financial problems. Thinking that you're going to win money because obviously the advertising says you're going to win, you're going to win. You know, porn preys on, and especially then dating apps and now even chatbots and relationship bots. You know, it's loneliness, isolation, rejection in the club, but just also it's like you grow up in this world, and there's no restrictions on watching porn really. And when you're curious, you just kind of drift there, and then you experience it back and forth. You're driven into more and more harmful content and more extreme content. And then some people develop porn addictions. You know, you're eating because you're stressed and you're, you know, a void to fill. And then and then it escalates. Drinking obviously escalates. Mine was anxiety and depression when I was kind of 15. And obviously I went to a private school and big into rugby, which was a heavy drinking culture, and going out and parties. And it always just like, well, I would just drink, and then drink too much, get anxious, regret it, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's why the book has shifted towards young people. And my new work in the first third, which is a think tank by young people for young people, is now looking specifically at young people, because we grow up and develop with these products in every part of our lives. Like it's easy to think that young people could be using kind of 5 or 6 addictive products in a weekend with no breaking a sweat really. And it's not only the harms we experience in the moment, but it's how is our development being shaped by these products essentially as well.
Yeah, I think something we discussed very briefly on LinkedIn was, I mean, I talk about alcohol almost exclusively, but we talked about the sort of overlap between the ways that we might look at alcohol as a disinhibiting social, you know, platform in a sense, in the way that you know, social media it might be used like Facebook or Instagram, and no doubt platforms of TikTok I've never heard of, where it's a disinhibited space in which people can mess around, have fun, hit up people that they maybe not met before. So I wonder whether there is, you know, as a way of looking at the way that these products, you know, grab onto our desire to be, you know, known and liked and have friends, and how, you know, they can in some cases serve our purposes, but in other cases, you know, have a negative effect. Do you see any sort of you know, comparison there?
Yeah, it's a complicated one, and the comparison is quite good, because both products have it kind of solves the need, but it also kind of has harms accompanied with it, and that is the kind of negotiation that we all go through. Social media, obviously, it is sold to us as the place to connect. You make friends, you do this and that, and the design of it is obviously there to elevate the kind of expectation that and capitalize on our desire for social connection, while what we get back from it fundamentally kind of is just a kind of hollow echo of what we want, which is why we use it enough. We keep using it, but we're also we're unhappy using it. One of the NEET's report said that, what was it? It might have been another report, said young people talking about if they want their younger siblings using social media, they said that I wouldn't change it for me, but I don't want I got benefits from it, but I wouldn't want my younger siblings using it. So they're saying, well, it helped me get by in an environment, in a society that has removed the spaces for me to connect with other people, but I wouldn't want my young siblings using it because of all these harms that I do know about it. And the aim of the game really is smart regulation along the realms of the drivers being addictive product design, marketing, and availability. So alcohol, you can't make it any less addictive, but you can reduce the marketing or the availability. Social media, you can't make it much less available, or the marketing, because the marketing is me sending you a meme and the messaging, but you can reduce the addictive product design. You can reduce the algorithms or change the algorithms. The the colors of the notifications, the design of the page, all of this stuff can be done so people can be more in control of their lives, get the benefits without the harms.
Okay, should it be regulation or voluntary codes of practice?
Regulation. Time and time again, we have seen that soft regulation, voluntary regulation doesn't work. And they'll kick up a fuss about it. They always do. They'll say the black market, the jobs, the this, the that. But they adapt, and like water, they find a way. They will innovate themselves into a new space. Like, look at the sugar tax. When it was introduced, everyone kicked up a massive fuss about it. Oh, it's going to ruin the industry. And then they all voluntarily reduced the sugar in their products because it was done by threshold. If you have this much sugar, you get this much tax off. And they thought it's just worth it. They all reduced the tax, and then I can't remember what the exact percentage is, but like sugar content in drinks dropped by like 35%. And it just has to be regulation, because money trumps everything. So we have to hem them in, to regulate them in ways that will innovate in ways that means for better social outcomes.
Okay, it's interesting. Just nip back to the previous topic about the way that we use, alcohol and social media to make friends, connections of one kind or another. And I mean, with alcohol, the sort of classic is that you refer really to your drinking companions as drinking buddies. They don't always align with friendship, and I guess the same might be true for people who you swap memes with on social media. They don't necessarily, they're not friends in the more traditional sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that varies person to person. I know that my drinking buddies are my friends because I've been lucky to have the same friends from school to now. But I was thinking the other day, I was like, have I made friends in a club that I'm still friends with? And I'm just like, I just don't think so. Maybe in the pub a couple of times, but like real connection, real proper friends, I think that is exceedingly rare. And then if you think about the amount of time that not the time and the money that I've spent, all the weekends that I've spent, that's a terrible return on investment. And how much better it would be if all of that time and money had been spent doing things that, what the connection economy would offer. Things, I guess that it's not really my job to say what they would be, but there's things that offer us real face-to-face connection that just connect people far better than I think clubs and bars do in their own way.
Yeah, I mean, I was just to sort of looking at the commercial goals of the companies that produce these legal products. They're doing it, by and large in a legal fashion. Their commercial goals don't always align with the goals of the customer. So just to take an example, if you're a dating website wants to get people to, I guess, pay to subscribe or at least watch ads or whatever on the dating app, should I say, and the last thing it wants is people to run off and go and have a happy life, because that this is just not in their interest to lose people to a relationship. So if you look at the commercial motives of the different, we've talked 10 different areas here, but I mean each none of them will have motives which are actually aligned with the goals that we're talking about in terms of our kind of utility application of their products.
Obviously they'll still package it that way, and the dating apps are a great example of that. And it's something that I think affects our generation affects all generations, but I think I see it so clearly in ours, because obviously the apps are designed to keep you on the apps, and they do all of the behavioral psychology, and the design is designed to keep you on the apps. The scrolling, the variable rewards in the profiles that they give you, the swiping, the paying for super likes, the fact that when you join the app at the beginning, you get loads of really attractive people, and then you get some free likes, and then it's all designed to keep you on there. And the consequences of that are clear. So imagine if you got on a dating app and you've just paid for 6 months of membership, and then you meet someone that you think could have potential. You're like, well, I kind of want to stay on the app to get my my 6 months out of him. And you just talk to people left, right, and center. You're not really connecting with anyone, and then you burn out and you quit. And that happens so often. And everyone I meet is like, yeah, I'd rather meet someone in person, but like, this is the only place to do it. Everyone hates them. Everyone wants to meet them in person, but we're locked into the system because that's the only thing that's there.
Yeah, I suppose the irony is, of course, that even meeting somebody in person, there's a high likelihood they're also on apps. So,
yeah.
So it actually changes the game a little bit.
But then, and how do you meet someone in person?
Mm-hmm.
Pub, bars, it's. I mean, obviously there are spaces. There are obviously spaces, but if you're envisioning the society that we want our children to live in, it's not that. There should be way more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just to go back to the dating thing, and probably this similar with the other addictive products you're talking about. They are kind of, to use a sort of Homer Simpson phrase, that the answer to the problem they've just created. So I guess you can end up in a cycle of consumption where you're dealing with the side effects of the last date you've been on or the last puff of your vape, and the kind of psychological down you might get after it doesn't work. You solve by, hey presto, having another puff on your vape, or
yes,
signing up to your swiping right or whatever.
There's a thing on dating apps that is so interesting to me. It was the difference in the boy experience and the girl experience. So the girl experience, you'll get 2,000 likes in a day, in 2 days, and it's just like, because guys will just swipe, and you'll be overwhelmed, and then you basically burn out because you can't talk to that many people, and then no one meets anyone. With the guys' experience, it's bleak sometimes. So like, if you apply to a job in person and you get, it was good to meet you, but here's no. Compared to the young person's version, when you're sending out 200 applications, you're getting nothing back. You're just like, this is miserable. I don't even know what. It's just blank rejection. And it's and then obviously, this is why the part of the reason the addiction economy is we use these products at the same time. The rejection would lead you to porn, lead you to vapes, or lead you to going out and getting really drunk. And the interaction between these things is a thing that I think is worth measuring, and that's what I hope to do as well with work.
You talked about finding solutions. What would a non-addiction economy look like, or at least a post-addiction economy look like?
Yeah. I mean, so when we wrote the book, we didn't want to just be the problem-framey book and be like. So we really wanted to focus on the solution, and we realized that the solution, as a solution to addiction, is not sobriety; it's connection. So the solution, when with all these young people getting addicted to things, is regulate the drivers in the industries and build the connection economy. So that is, the example that I'm using, which is actually an alcohol example, is from Buzzballs. Have you seen the Buzzballs?
I've seen on social media. I've never seen them in the wild, but
and on TikTok. And as was the same with vapes, make it fun, make it colorful, give it to influencers, give it out in giveaways, and the young people will create the culture around the product. So then the one I saw was buzzball curling in university accommodations, where they're sweeping the thing, and they're all it's all a big joke. But the industry is never going to come up with that. But the young people know themselves, know their culture, know their age, and we shouldn't be. So when we're looking to build the connection economy, I think the approach shouldn't be, here's £1 million, go do some more football stuff. It should be, let's create the system where we speak to young people and help them identify the little niche pockets of community and culture and interest and passions that they have, and build services and activities around that in the local area, in local spaces, to get them face to face with each other. And I think that giving them the agency to do that is the only way that's going to get them off the devices, because I think that's what worked with me, as well as integrating in intergenerational things. And instead of it being I think volunteering is an important part, but not seeing it as volunteering, seeing it as a kind of codependent relationship. So we have a father figure a lack of father figure in young people, and we have a male loneliness problem. These are not separate solutions, the separate problems. The solution is the same thing. And it's about creating a more integrated society around spaces and products and services that bring us face to face, and rather than in our own little bubble in our rooms.
Well, thank you very much for taking me out of my little bubble. It's not quite a face-to-face meeting, but yeah, it's been extremely interesting and it's broadened my horizons beyond the alcohol topic. So thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.